10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Good luck, studio.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Paul Chandler, the Shy Yeti. He's not that shy.
Oh, it's the Shy Life Podcast. Yeah!
All I wanted was a pie, and then I hatched out of an egg.
Okay, bring the mic over. He's ready to record.
It's the quiet ones you've got to watch, you know.
Is it metaphorical? Is it deep? Is it deep?
Boy, he's not all that shy as right.
Blimey, Governor, it's the Shy Life Podcast.
502.
Hello, campers. How are you?
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Shy Life Podcast with me, Paul the Shy Yeti. How are you doing? Oh, I'm all right, thank you very much. So what's this episode going to be about? Well, I've got two special guests who have talked to each other before, but who don't often get to talk. So we've got them back together. It's Nick Goodman and Toppie Smelly.
Hello!
Back together again.
Yay. Good to be here.
It's been a long time.
It has, kind of.
Yeah.
It's been about
Toppie and I-
150 episodes, I think.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly. Toppie has some questions for us, but I will explain more once we run the theme music. So let's run that theme music.
Darling, it's the Shy Life Podcast.
Yes, but it's positive things about the highlights, the Shy Life.
You won't find a cast of characters like this everywhere.
Hello, Paul.
I'll go anyway for a potato.
Delicious.
This particular episode of The Shy Life is a little more abstract than usual. Okay, it looks like the hairy guy is ready to record. 3, 2, 1.
Go Shy Yeti.
Oh, I hope he hasn't found out my secret. I think he has.
If you thought that was bad, just listen to this.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait for it to begin.
It's the Shy Life Podcast.
He's positively glowing.
It's all gooey and easy and yum, 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 yum.
And we're back. So I was talking to Toppie when I suggested doing this episode. I was talking to Toppie about what we should talk about, and Toppie mentioned that a particular episode we'd released, which was actually one that had been sitting in the archives for a while, but it had raised quite a lot of questions with him. It was an episode we'd done about tapezines and things like that. Is that right, Toppie?
Well, yeah, actually, it's the last. I'm a little behind, but that's, for me, the last episode of The Shy Life I listened to, and boy, do I have questions.
Excellent.
I found it absolutely fascinating, and these questions are not going to come out in the right order, and I'm going to jump around a lot, but it's all about that. And I just found it so interesting, and I'm so glad that Paul played actual pieces of what you talked about in the first part. And first of all, I gotta say, Nick, I think at one point you said, well, you couldn't do this. It wouldn't work as a podcast nowadays. And I have to say, if I understood you correctly, I think what you had there was what a lot of podcasts are, and that it would go over very well.
Yeah, actually, yes. I'm not quite sure what I meant by that now, come to think of it. I think because, of course, a lot of the, as is probably self-evident in the episode, a lot of the people that we who got together for the tapezines were disparate friends who we kind of, and the tapezines actually helped to mould them together. So we've got people like Toppie and Lisa and all these people that we've known for years. And then, of course, Lisa that's how Lisa came into the fold. But yeah, I suppose, because you've got the audio thing and you've got the clips. I think I'm always a little bit worried about putting out RPS as a podcast because I suppose of the copyright thing, but also,
Paul adheres to that very strictly.
Yeah.
I don't exactly.
No,
but nobody's put me in jail yet.
No, I think you could probably get away with this. And I did a review of a film for Warren in just before Christmas, which we put some film clips in. And I suppose at the time I didn't think anything of it, but also I think we're a bit wild card as well. And there are a few of our number that kind of not exactly in hiding, but they stuff from anxiety, and they don't. I very much doubt they'd actually want. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, you probably have to edit a few comments because they'd be a bit libelous. We were very small fry in those days compared to some of the other tape scenes. But,
well, I mean, I was listening to it and I said to myself, "My God, he was podcasting before there was podcasting." I want to make sure, just in case people are listening to this right now who didn't hear that episode, Paul or Nick, very, very briefly, just explain all over briefly what tape zines were about and what years we're talking about, what time frame.
Shall I do the answer?
Yeah, you should.
Time frame. Tape zines basically a tape version of a magazine. There was a lot of, taking Doctor Who as an example, there was a lot of fanzines, which of course is a bit much wider sort of understood kind of concept, because there's fanzines about all sorts of things, but they're all paper, they're all sort of invariably very cheaply produced and photocopied, sometimes photocopied very badly. And this was a tape version of it. About 1983, I bought my first Doctor Who tape scene. I loved tape record. I've always loved cassettes and recording everything. I love all that sort of stuff. And so the idea of a tape scene, which hadn't occurred to me before, was a revelation. And I sent for it at once. And then,
right. Let me hold you off right there, because I think the connection from fanzines to tape zines is an important one.
Yeah.
At that time, and even before, certainly, I would say this fanzine thing is routed in the early 70s through, and yes, certainly through the 80s. And fanzines were a real thing here in America, whereas tape zines, I never heard of it until you guys were talking about it. Anyways, the connection between fanzines and tape zines. Fanzines were things that someone like me who maybe adored a comic book or a character or a comic book company or Star Trek or something like that.
Yeah. And
because we were such fans, we were compelled to share our thoughts or collect other people's thoughts. And we'd type it out on our typewriter.
Yeah.
And then we'd find little bits of art that we'd cut out and we'd put it in there, and then we'd Xerox the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And send it to people. But not only that, people were so into this that they would take these little assemblages, usually connected by at least one staple, and they would go to bookstores and say, "Is it okay if I just leave these here?" They'd be free. And so you could go into good bookstores that understood this phenomenon and allowed people to leave their stuff there. You could go in and find these little fanzines, and and some of them were wacky, some of them were hugely abstract, some of them were very scholarly, but it was a thing. People did this.
Yeah.
And so what Nick's talking about is a little bit of an evolution beyond that. And what I want to know is, so you said it was a revelation, but how did you, I guess you said you bought one, but where did you find it? How did you come across a tape zine?
I was, for 10 years, between 80 and 90, I was a member of the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, which had a newsletter that went out, Celestial Toy Room, and they would put adverts for the fanzines in it. And there was one that ran for years and years called The Oracle, which a guy called David Howe did. And there was a big proclamation in 1983 one of the pages of the newsletter saying the Oracle speaks, and I thought, and I thought, and read on. I thought, why has nobody done this before? In actual fact, somebody had done it before, because I've since received a copy from our friend Alan of a special that was done by the Doctor Who Appreciation Society in about 1977, which had a huge barrage of clips from stories that were considered missing, and this must have been an I don't know how widely spread it was, because we had tape recorders obviously, but I don't know if you had to send away. It was before my time, so I didn't know anything about it. So, but I had this one-off thing called The World of Doctor Who, which was like a guide to the very earliest years for the novice fans. And so he did. There was that one-off before this, but it certainly captured my imagination, because I heard all these clips from stories I'd not seen. It was amazing.
And you came across it at what, a Doctor Who convention or something, or what? Like?
Well,
you saw it advertised.
That's right. Yeah, they sent you if you were lucky. Sometimes they were a little bit behind with them, but they sent you this monthly newsletter, which showed you a range of fanzines to buy. It told you all the latest news about the program.
There you go, folks. It's a fanzine about fanzines. How about that?
Well, it quite literally, yes. Yeah.
Well, that's how nutty, fanboys were. They loved that stuff. That we ate it up.
Yes.
Paul, I don't want to leave you out of this.
I was a bit little in those days.
Now you well, maybe you did, but I don't think so. You knew of Tapezines, but you didn't try one, or did you? To try doing one, I should say.
I think I found out about them via Nick, really, or when he started talking about being that bit younger. I wasn't so much into fandom at the time when Nick was, so I wasn't. I was a little bit out of the loop, and also I didn't have any Doctor Who friends for quite a while until I met Nick. So we're talking about sort of 87, 88. So yeah, I was a bit behind on connecting with other fans. I was a fan in isolation, and the odd friend at school who was a fan, but I never knew somebody who was as much a fan as me, or was more of a fan than I was.
You know what? What you just said struck me, and I think it explains why this phenomenon grew and was a thing. You just said isolation. You could be a suit. I'm going to take myself and Dark Shadows as an example. If there was anything I was a super fan of, it was Dark Shadows. But this fandom existed, me, myself, and I. I could tell friends about it, and they'd look at me like their eyes would blink and glaze over, and like, they had never seen it. They didn't know what I was excited about. And it was just a fandom of me. And these fanzines allowed fans to communicate with each other and share their joy about what they were fans about. It was isolation. That's how you could be excited about something, because if you were like me, you'd be going, I love that Barnabas, I sure did, and Julia, and people would just, okay, right. Okay, Toppie, I think it's time for you to go to bed. No.
Alternatively, though, I mean, when I joined the Doctor Who Appreciation Society in 1980, I was thinking I was 11. I was thinking there was going to be people as wide-eyed and in awe of we thoroughly in love with the show as I did. And of course, most of them were a lot older than me, and they'd seen the early years. And they really weren't very impressed with the stuff that was on at the time. So
Isn't that funny?
It was a rude awakening. I suddenly realised there was this kind of this level of cold indifference or rather snobbish superiority about the very era I was. I was very kind of a small fish in a very large and unfriendly pond in some cases.
It also might be fair to say that whereas in the 1970s, like every kid who was worth their merit would watch Doctor Who, whereas by the 80s it was the one or two oddballs in the class that watched Doctor Who and nobody else watched it anymore.
Yeah, folks in America who are listening to this, you have to understand, if you don't, that Doctor Who was a thing in the UK for over a decade. It was a long running TV show that literally, just the way Nick described, it would be kind of like me and my Trek is the original cast. Yeah. And then I'm trying to explain my joy of the original cast to someone who's all into the next generation. And they're like, oh my God, that original cast, it was so old and the effects were stupid. Oh my God, it was so cheesy. And because they love Next Generation, which is an altogether different thing. So we're talking about something that existed for so long. You actually have different generations who love different parts of it, of Doctor Who's history.
And it was that frustration in not having, or my voice being in the minority, that most motivated me doing a fanzine or a tapezine of my own, even though it took a long time to get going.
Yeah. And another thing folks need to remind themselves is this is all before the internet. Mm-hmm. Now it's easy to connect with fans. It's no problem now, but back then, it was difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's groups coming out of your ears these days, and there's nothing you can't be a group of.
Although it's actually harder. There are so many groups, it's difficult to find the group that you fit in to, because you've got the new show, you've got the old show, you've got people who like the old show, don't like the new show. You've got, there's so many different subsections. The amount of Doctor Who groups I've joined and then left because everyone's so negative about some aspect, whereas I'm generally positive about everything to some level. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, I don't need to read this. I don't need to read how it's awful that there's a female doctor, or.
And you get squashed also between those polarized opinions, because I've been there are several missing episodes of Doctor Who, ones that the BBC wiped, and I'm very keen on them discovering some or anything these days. And I've been on so many sites that have either the ultra super optimistic and the super negative clashed violently, and I would just walk away from it. No, this isn't for me. But just recently, there's a guy who's said he's looking for episodes, and he's given very rational explanations as to why this might be and why this would. And suddenly, everything's a little bit more balanced and that sort of thing.
I think the telling thing is that actually this is perfectly normal and happens in every fan area. Because my experience in the last year has been that I'm a big ABBA fan, but I've never been like in an ABBA fan club in the way that I've been in. There was a group I loved, but I didn't know many other fans, and it was just a personal thing. But since they've done a new album, I had joined a few Facebook groups, and in that fandom, there's always people who, when they have a difference of opinion, they don't have the social grace to kind of phrase it nicely. They just snap at somebody, and you've got the moderator kind of going, come on, we're trying to be. And I'm thinking this is very familiar to some of the Doctor Who groups I'm in. I'm sure Star Trek groups, whatever, every group.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I know you're right, because one group on Facebook, or set of groups I visit every single day, are groups about Marvel Comics, and they're all separated. Marvel Comics Silver Age, Marvel Comics Golden Age, Marvel Comics, we only talk about Jack Kirby here. Marvel, right? And if you love the Marvel cinema universe and you go into one of those comic book groups and talk about a Marvel movie, you are going to get your ass trounced the hell out of there. because we don't talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe in this group. God damn it, we only talk about 1971 and 73, and that's it. So get out of here. We don't want to hear you. And it's very volatile. It's like, come on. All right.
I mean, where I sometimes have, with the, I think with the Doctor Who ones, I've just given up. If I realise the group's so negative, I'll just leave it. But that with the ABBA one, I've noticed there's a few people. There are some of their songs, maybe that they're album tracks or B-sides, that are slightly tackier than the big hits. But some of those I really like, in the same way as there are Beatles songs that are tackier or weirder, which or some people consider them novelty, like Yellow Submarine. But those were the songs that when I first got into them, that they appealed to me because I was young. They have a place in the canon of both groups, and so I do sometimes, if I see there's a song or something needs sticking up for, then I'll go, no, actually that's one of my favourites. And I know Nick was also keen to do that with Doctor Who stories that weren't that were out of favour.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the technology behind Tapezines and this miraculous thing that happened sometime in the mid-70s or before or a little after. I'm not exactly sure, but it was this little thing called a tape cassette recorder. I bet each of us has a story about getting their first little, maybe Panasonic, tape recorder machine with a condensed mic, or sometimes a cord you could plug in with a different kind of mic. Mine had a condensed mic. Anyways, I got mine on my. How old are you when you are in first year of junior high? Anyways, young. Anyways, but I got my Panasonic tape cassette recorder for a birthday present. And it changed my life. When did you guys like it? I bet it was a gift.
Paul, do you want to go first? Because I won't know when to stop.
I remember having a tape recorder for a birthday, but I can't remember too much about what I used it for. The one I was talking to Nick about before we started recording that did it start to excite me more was the Walkman that I had that recorded, because then I'd always liked the idea being in partly because of being into writing. I like the idea, but also a writer who liked walking. I always wanted a dictaphone or something so I could go on a walk and then suddenly go, stop a message. I've just come up with an idea, all sort of very pretentious. And I never did get one. It was very frustrating because my dad had them in his office, and so I knew that they existed when I wanted one. But when I got my Walkman that recorded, I was able to do that. And of course, I don't know that I did do that very much once I actually had it, but I did really start to do it maybe around the same time as I was doing tape messages. So it may be that I did tape messages to friends, and also I did find that I'd done an audio play with my brother, which which has been on this show, and I'd totally forgotten about it. So I don't think I used it as much as I thought I did, but I certainly did. But
Nick, before you go, I just want to say what I used mine for. As soon as I got this thing, I think I started doing my own little radio plays. Just exactly I'm still doing them today on the Smellcast. I don't know what that says about me, but
you're creative and never stop cherishing that.
There you go. Anyways, that is the first thing I started doing, and I did it from junior high all the way to my last year of high school. And then college took over, and life went a different direction, and I lost my audience of one, which was my best friend who happened to be named Paul. Not this Paul, American Paul. And I had an audience of one. It was Paul. He was the best audience I've ever had in my life. And I would come to school with a tape cassette in my pocket, and I'd say, "Here's the latest episode." He'd take it home and listen, and then it got him to do his own radio play. So he'd come in the next day. Here's my next episode. And so that's it. The audience never extended beyond the two of us. Anyways, that's what I did with my Panasonic. Where and when did you get yours, Nick?
My first love was a... My parents bought it in October 70. I still have a scan of the chit of the a Czech. It was a gorgeous thing with a glass top, well, sort of plasticky glass top, and a mic, a separate mic. My dad mostly used it for taping things off the radio, some of which I've still got, and some very early recordings of my sister and I. And occasionally we get it out, and we do it like there's a silly little pop song I do at one point. There's a poem that my sister reads, but I think about 1976. I thought, yeah, let's get this out and record something, and it's just me singing and sort of pretending there's an audience out there. And then about a year later, I came home from school. And I thought, let's do this again, and me and that Sony, which was sort of getting on a bit by then, were inseparable. And Christmas '77, I was never off the bloody thing. You were saying about it changing your life. It changed mine. I was nutty. I suddenly became nutty about tape recording. I did songs, I did little sketches, I did little interviews. At the time, I'd started my own sort of episodic science fiction homegrown show called The Magnet Editor, which a very large book exists out there about it and all the stories and everything. But in those days, I wasn't recording it, but I was kind of doing little supposedly behind the scenes features with interviews with the cast and things like that. And I did my own. You were talking about audio plays. I really missed the boat, really, and I didn't really grasp it in the same way that you did. I really liked that story, but I did do, when everybody was out and I wasn't going to be interrupted, I did actually do a whole story. I played all the characters, I did all the special effects, I did all the incidental music, all my verbal communication, and I wish I still had it. And there's so many things I wish I still had from that era, because it was wild and it was silly and it was, and I have my own arena, and I went on to get a tape recorder of my own. There's the little thingy I put on Facebook, which is a recording of me getting my own tape recorder in 1979. This was the family one, the Sony. It was from Rumbelows, which was a very ill-fated it was a high street. It was one of the first high streets to get and it was, that lasted about 2 months before it sort of had something fatal happen to it. And then I got a Crown one, which was clattered a lot. I recorded a lot of doctors clattered. Yeah. And there was cassette tape recorder, and I had a Sharp, and then I had the last actual tape recorder I had was something called a realistic one, which had different speeds and things like that. And that is the one I recorded all my Ray Face shifts on. And I think the cables were still there. I think I was still using that to record music to put on my films in 2000 when I was first going out with Ali, because by that time the cable was so knackered that I held it down with a book, which was and she said, hang on, I don't know much about electricity, but surely you'll fry. But no, I went in the 80s. I got into mini tape recorders, like you were saying, the dictaphone type ones. I would take them to parties. I've still got recordings from that era and from parties. Maybe a bit of a knob of myself, but it was. I just wanted to get to know people. I wanted to it broke the ice. It almost broke a bit part of me when people didn't want to do it. But it was. I'm glad I did that now, because there's people that have grown up and grown old, and in some cases aren't with us anymore. And the one recording I really treasure more than anything else is my grandparents. We recorded them talking about my dad's childhood back in 71, and I've still got that, and it's absolutely wonderful. So passion that's what got me going, this passion for recording, which is why I always sort of throw my hat in the ring for any recordings with podcasts and everything, because I've just, it's definitely a passion. Definitely.
I think I probably my version of audio, although I did, dabble in many ways, but I think I was like that with my video camera, and that I was a menace to society, and you wouldn't see me without it around my neck for about a 10-year period.
But that was I was just going to say that was the next step in the evolution, is because these tape cassette machines we're talking about existed long before home video and home video cameras, were a thing, and of course the originals were massive. And then they got smaller and smaller and smaller. At any rate, that was the next step that I kind of missed, because I was off to college by the time home videos became a thing. And, it was just a different era in my life. Had I had a damn video recorder of my own, I would have been a maniac with it, just like you guys.
Yeah. I was at college. I was at university for the first 3 years, but I wasn't the sort of person where I was that sociable at university. I had my couple of friends, and then when there were free times when I didn't have lectures, I'd be off recording by myself or with people if there were people.
If there were people.
So certain part was my social life in a way, even if there was nobody else involved in the episodes.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me say a couple things before we go, because Nick, you mentioned how it makes you sad how much that you recorded back then is now gone, and I certainly understand that. You guys have done a much better job than I have of saving all that stuff, to my eternal regret. For some stupid reason, all of those tapes that I did with my friend Paul, I saw in a box one day, and I said, why am I still holding on to these? Why? And I purged myself. I threw them away. Oh, my God. To my eternal regret.
Don't you? You kind of get to a point in your life where it's sort of turned, not so much where we are now, where we cherish what we've done, and let's keep every little. But I mean, you do. I did a whole series of recordings with my friend Mark Slade, and we were playing two scientists, and we had all these wacky creations, and we had all these wacky characters, and we recorded them all. That's all gone. You do, though. I mean, don't torture yourself too much, because it does happen. You do go through that.
The fact that Sutton Park survived is partly due to the fact that my parents have got a reasonable sized house, and that they didn't need drawers in particular their bedrooms where those tapes could just sit for 30 years.
I've got to the age now where I am any little thing that kind of comes to photographs, recordings, audio recording, I kind of, ooh, yes. I mean, someone I'd known for years, or on Facebook with, came up with a picture from when we were at Playgroup in 1973, and there's a picture of us there, and it's an old picture of myself I'd never seen before, and I was absolutely over the moon.
Hello listeners, it's me again. Cuthbert the Robot. I'm just here to provide a break in our current episode. I am happy to announce that I have some clips that were passed to me by Nick of some of the recordings that he made during his youth, some of them dating back to the 1970s, now safe digitized for our enjoyment in 2022. They involve friends and family. Some of them are from recordings that he made during birthday parties. Anyway, they are presented here as an example of a kind of recordings that Nick made before the days of tapezines, home movies, or podcasts. Let's have a listen and see what he came up with as we head back many years into the archives.
The last one that I did.
Go on then.
Dear Mummy, Jenny has been good, and I'm on Big Violet Book 3, and I enjoy going to Helen's house for lunch, and I play with her Basil Brush after dinner, and and all sorts of things, and Basil Brush and Co. Dear Mummy, I'm on Violet Book 3, and Jenny has been good, and I hope you enjoyed your trip to Paris. And I enjoying going to Helen's house. And the last time I went there, I went into her bedroom. And Basil Brush and Co. Bye. I love you, babe. Thanks for your presents. Oh, la, 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 la. Hello?
You didn't bend down over it.
It's very sensitive.
Come on, speak up.
I never knows what to say.
Hello, this is a new tape recorder, and I'm not quite sure what to say until I'm very pleased with. I'm very pleased with. Thank you, my name's Daddy. Hello, this is here on his birthday, 11th. And here's Mark Spade to sing you that famous one tune that you hear every, what's it say? Well, I call it every Wednesday. And here it is to sing the pressure!
Crazy Horses. Now you seem to be talented at singing that. Would you please sing it for us?
Crazy horses. Crazy horses.
Finished now, Mr. Goodman? Delights. Now, Mr. Goodman, I would like you to sing Away in a Manger.
Away in the manger, no crib for a bed, there little Lord Jesus laid down his sweet head. The stars in the bright sky look down where he lays, and little Lord Jesus asleep on the head.
Delightful, Mr. Goodman. That was very beautiful, and I see you will be singing it at the concert on Christmas Day to delight us all again. Goodbye, everybody. That was Mr. Goodman. As last time, he was so very whispery.
We're going to do with Molly Mittens, with Molly Mittens, with Molly Mittens. Every night she runs around the house as if she chasing after a little mouse. What are we going to do with Molly Mitten? With Molly Mitten, she's running wild. What are we going to do with Molly? What are we going to do with Molly? What are we going to do with such a job? As we go through the cat list.
Go on then. It's recording. Go on. Go on. It's
Hello, everybody. Yard. Catch it if you can, and jump into the air. Catch it if you can, catch it if you can. If you are a man, catch it if you can. Throw it if you must, catch it if you can. Catch it if you can. If you are a man, throw it if you must. You can. If you are a man, kick it if you must. Catch it if you can. Catch it if you can. If you are a man. Now here's bounce up and down. Bounce up and down. Bounce up and down. When you go to town, you'll bounce up and down. Bounce up and down. Bounce up and down. When you go to town, you'll bounce up and down.
That's the weird thing with the videos, is that I connect far more with them to a certain extent with the audio that I strip off the videos, because as good as the digitizations are, the audio doesn't age in the same way as and it's far more pristine than, you know, that and because audio is my thing these days, that's probably when I connect most, because I'm using it for something that I'm putting out there now, sort of thing.
Absolutely.
I just want to let tell the audience that for those of us that were around, in the era where we would develop or grow shells and shells and shells of VHS tapes and audio cassette tapes, the idea now that we do it digitally and it exists in the cloud or on a hard drive, and all of these hours of things, for example, the Smellcast in the last 11, 12 years, it's all in this one little itty bitty place, which is like, a miracle.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's absolutely beautiful. I didn't think it was physically possible to, say for Sutton Park as an example, to all 3,158 episodes of Sutton Park in this little box that's like no bigger than a cigarette case.
Yes, it's amazing.
Beautiful.
The other thing I want to tell the audience is why, getting back to audio cassettes, why it was such a big deal, and it's because before audio cassettes, there were portable recorders. My father actually had one in the late 60s. Must have cost him a pretty penny. It was small, but it was reel to reel, meaning that you would have this magnetic tape around a spool, and you'd have to thread it through and then connect it to another reel that would pull it along. And by the time you finished an hour of recording, all of that magnetic tape on one reel would end up on the other reel, and it was called reel to reel. And it just slowed you down. You had these fussy tapes that would come undone, and you'd have magnetic tape on the floor, and you'd spool it up again. And it's the threading, and I mean, it was just it sounds like, what are you talking about? But it was just it wasn't snappy doodle. It's the cassette tape recorder. You get that cassette tape, you plop it in there, you close it, you push play, you push record. It's done. It's there. It was so immediate.
Yeah, or you would still get the odd thing where the machine would chew it up. But I used to be there if I'd recorded. I remember I recorded the Christmas party of the church youth group I was part of, and the tape chewed it up. And I was like there as a cross between a very serious surgeon and an anxious parent, trying to just turn it right the round way, link it up again, and then put it gently into the recorder. But going back to reel, yes, I even as late as the early 90s, I did the sound system I ran the sound system for a local Amdram group amateur dramatics group that I'm part of, and they were still using reel to reel back then. It's amazing. Yeah.
I don't think we were expecting this, but I do have a special guest to introduce now. It is an audio tape. Hello, audio tape. What was it? Yes, very good. What's it like? What's it like sitting in the drawer next to me for the last 30 years and not being used? Really? Oh, my God. You've got some other place to be. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. That's it for now.
You know what's funny about that, Paul, is that sound to all three of us really means something, doesn't it?
Doesn't it ever?
Although that wasn't an audio, that was actual.
We've still got a tape. We still embrace all mediums in our household. But we still have. I don't think we've actually got a tape recorder per se, but we've got a tape converter. So I can play any cassette tape and convert it into a MP3 sound file.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I've done that with all domestic recordings that I've got.
Yeah. The other sound that's embedded in our mind's audience is the sound of putting the tape in and closing the cover.
Yes.
That sound was like, oh my God. I want to go on with some questions about how you actually made your fanzines, Nick. And I'm just assuming now. So I heard Paul played at the end of that episode actual clips from one of your fanzines, and there were sound effects or clips from the show, that kind of thing. And I have to assume, given what you had, you must have had two recorders, and you would play the clip and then record it on the other machine, right?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, I did have a kind of stereo system with it was bought in Curry's, the place, and it was I think it was a shop demonstration. So we are talking pretty cheap trash.
But it was a limitation of the machine, like reel to reel. This went on for years at radio stations. You could cut and splice with a razor blade and put it back together with a type, and you could do your editing. But if you were using a cassette tape, you didn't do that. To the cassette tape, it would have ruined it. So you had to do the editing in the machine as you were going, right?
There was always a master tape with Ray Phase Shift, and I would record up to a point, and then there was the first article. And if it was like Toppie used to come and see me every other Sunday, and if he, I always set a theme. So I and Toppie would come up with it, and he would record. We got to that point in the tape, and he'd record that. We could record if he was in my room. We'd record it straight on there. If I get a contribution from my friend in Lancashire, I would say, right, so we leave a gap here, or we tape it onto here from the stereo system with the 2 decks. Put it on there, and then we'd record an end bit there, or Paul would come around, he'd do something live on the actual tape, master tape.
Live on tape.
Yeah. Oh well, straight onto the master tape as opposed to dubbed on by the stereo. But it was all very cheap. It was unsophisticated. I had a realistic tape recorder, which was just a shiny kind of. It was just a normal tape recorder, but it lasted all that time. And we connect. The thing that made me decide to do an audio tape, apart from Paul doing a one as well, was I had a jack lead. And that meant I could get the recording from the video, boom, into that and you could talk freely whilst it was being recorded because it was immediately jacked in. So that was that kind of, and also I was getting more of the show on video by then. I thought, yeah, let's go for it. Let's put one out and see if people like it. And I ended up doing 14. Yeah, 14.
Mm-hmm. Well, that explains what I heard. And that's if you did what I did and had 2 machines and you would play something and then record it, there was a loss in quality because you're basically dubbing a tape, and then sometimes you'd be having a dubbed.
Absolutely.
But you're saying you had the cords and the connectors that you weren't using the mic. You were going from one machine to the other via a patch cord.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things actually, because some people, some of our team, even the last episode, didn't actually grasp this or use this, because there's a video that exists of us making the last issue. Our friend Andrew Candish is doing an article, and he's running a clip, and he's got the tape recorder there and the clip there on the stereo and recording. I said, aren't we going to dub it? Aren't you going to jack it in? Put the jack in, that is. And he's kind of talking over this kind of thing. And oh, thanks, Lord. Why didn't you jack it in? And we have a kind of one of the stand-up kind of comedy row because of this. But so there is video footage. There's some on Sutton Park actually. There's just video footage that exists of us recording the whole thing. I think there's a bit on YouTube as well.
It didn't necessarily happen as much with the Tapezine, but we had a friend who did audio dramas in the same way as we might have done Tapezines, and it's very similar to how we do things for the Smellcast and the Charlotte podcast. That you might ask me to do some lines, or you might ask me, and I'll send it you. And usually these days the sound quality isn't that different between you and me if we've recorded directly onto some recording device. But if the sound is lower, then we can easily sort of crank it up so that it matches. But of course, back in the late 80s, early 90s, doing in the way we did things, if there was a difference in sound quality. So our friend who did the dramas, he'd ask us to do our lines, and then he'd get 5 or 6 different people sending in recordings. Unfortunately, the difference in sound quality would be very dramatic, and it would not be. It would be very obvious that the people weren't in the room. That happened a little bit with me in the Charlotte podcast when we first started doing stuff, you and I, and pretending we were in the same room, and we were recording before Skype allowed you to record. I had to, but not to the extent that they experienced it back then. Where
that was funny. That was the Attack of the Killer Tulips, wasn't it? Yeah, that's right. I remember that very well because I think I sent some voices into this audio drama, and it got cancelled before my episodes went out, which I thought just my luck really. But it was, I know what Paul means, because you'd have they were very great. You'd have someone say a line, and then you'd have a great big clunk, and another voice sounding like it was recorded in the Antarctic. With a funny little name, so bloomy voice. And then somebody would come back at a different, and it didn't really work.
No, but it was fun.
But it was fun. The whole experimental thing. I get warm and fuzzies just thinking about it.
Well, Nick, there were some telltale signs on the clips that Paul put on a show from your Tapezines, and the one I noticed was, first of all, there was no loss in quality, and I said, well, Nick wasn't doing what I did. I just had two machines, and my mic would pick up what the other machine was doing, and there'd be that loss in quality. So I said, okay, Nick certainly wasn't doing that. The other telltale thing that was missing from your recordings is that clunk you just said, because every time you touched the play button, if you had a condenser mic especially, you'd get that at the beginning of every time you pressed record, and you couldn't get that damn sound off.
I think actually probably the chosen clip was probably one of the better quality.
I think if there had been a clonk, I did some editing. I did do some. I did do a little bit of because the clips that I was given were more than I needed. I was editing bits, so there was 21st century editing.
Yeah, we didn't go clunk all the time, but the thing is with RPS we knew it was just done in their bedroom with cheap equipment, and it was all about having fun. And we used to say there was that, and we built upon the jokes that it was cheap, or we'd be very sarcastic about the production values, and we would say one of them is the music's on a tape on the bed. I can't be bothered to put it in the machine, so I'll impersonate it, and they'd sing it instead. And we built on those jokes all the time. It's sort of. Yeah, so we didn't take ourselves very seriously, but it's very, very kind of you to say that.
I mean, that was the way, you call it maybe primitive now, but I was concerned about the audio quality, but not that concerned. It was for fun, and it's like, and so it was what it was. But I was I was amazed. But Paul just said he maybe snuck in a few edits there.
One of my later camcorders, one of my cheaper camcorders, had the on-off button was squeakier, and you can hear sort of it, when you turn it off. You just get the beginning of the sort of. It's not like a or anything, but I can hear my finger pressing on the button for that last. When I put clips on the Shy Life, I have to sort of, I can tell, even though I'm editing a video or just on as an audio, I tend to take those little bits out to make it smoother for the audio experience.
I've got two things to say about silly noises. One of which is back in the old Sony days when I discovered, by fiddling around with the tape recorder, that if you switched off the mic before you actually switched off the machine, it made a sort of noise. I can't really do it. A kind of farty noise. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was, on our Ray Face Shift, we had a BBC Sound Effects tape, and the end of it had got twisted, so it played backwards. Uh-huh. There was a sound effect of a computer from the Blake 7 series, and when you switched it on, it sounded like a sort of goosed parrot doing it. And of course, backwards it went. And yes, we actually threw it in. Toppie and I threw it in as a sort of, what do you think of that then, Ulrich? We actually used that twisted tape to our advantage.
That's fun. That's fun. While you were telling me that, another weapon in my arsenal that I forgot about until just now was sound effect records. They existed. LPs that were nothing but sound effects. And I found some, and I would have a portable record player on my desk right next to my stupid cassette recorder, so that if I wanted someone to shoot a gun, I could go to the groove with the gunshot and play it on the record. These sound effect records, you must have had them.
Oh yes, with the Doctor Who's sound effects, I used to speed them up and make other sound effects from the speed up.
Oh, what fun! What fun!
And the Daleks firing their gun, if you speeded them up to sort of double, they sounded like someone shaking some coffee beans.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? So were you like a weirdo like me and you would go to record stores? You wouldn't bother looking at... Paul, you were different because you were into music maybe. But I would go to record stores and find obscure weirdo sound effect, and they were hard to find. But that's what I would do when I went to record stores. I didn't care about the music. I wanted to find soundtracks for one.
I certainly was interested in them. I don't think there was that many on the market at the time.
No, there weren't.
I sort of have vague... Whenever I think about R.W.H. Smith, I don't think of where it is now. I think of where it was 30-odd years ago, which is just around the corner from where it is now. And I remember they had a huge record department. Oh, and so did I. I worked in a large record department at one point. Oh, yes.
Oh, boy.
A little bit of everything, really. But yes, that sort of obscure stuff I was more into than sort of looking for pop when I was younger.
Mm-hmm. Let me give you for instance, that's kind of funny. Is on one of my haunts, I found a really old record of a recreation of Fantastic Four #1 in audio. And it was a professionally done thing that Marvel Comics released as a record through a deal with somebody, and they had actors and they had sound effects, and they had the technology to do it smoothly. It certainly wasn't something they did on a cassette recorder. It was professionally recorded. But the thing is, what was valuable is that this recording of actors playing the script from the comic book is they had sound effects. So when the Thing would rip open the manhole cover, they put a sound effect in. I don't know where it came from or how they created it, but that was the valuable thing for me because this record was filled with weird sound effects. And, if I had a spot where, I don't know, I need something to sound like it was being pried open, I knew exactly where all the sound effects were on that record, and I could go, oh, I could use this. And it would be like, oh, problem solved.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really opened up a whole lot of opportunities. It encouraged me to make, that was the nerdiest thing of all. It encouraged me to make my own sound effects LP. Although on a tape, I'd get also the kitchen utensils. I think it was a mixer and a Hoover, and I'd speed it up, and I discovered a rich vein of sound effects, but by swinging my dad's old Roberts radio round and round, and you'd in oscillation, between, and you used to get all sorts of lovely weird sounds. I spent hours and hours just spinning, recording this record of the radio just spinning round on its little circle bit, and doing all sorts of weird. Again, only a slither of them still exist, but it's fun. The hours of fun.
Yeah, sometimes you have to record. I mean, I have a mixture of free sound effects from a website, but there's lots of gaps of things that I want sound effects for. So then I have to go and either make them myself or find them in some other situation, or go on YouTube and if I need a goat noise, just put on YouTube goats, and then record a bit of goat noise from a video about goats.
Yeah, that's what I do today, Paul, as well. Is through this is what's so super awesome about today, for you and I, is that you've got a repository of this stuff. I've never not been able to find what I wanted from YouTube. No matter what I've done, what sound effect I needed, I always find it on YouTube. That's amazing. You don't have to find obscure records that, you could make do with. You can find almost exactly what you want. It's a miracle. Anyways, I got to tell you this little setup for back when I had my tape cassette recorder and I'd do plays. The two sound effects that you use constantly is a door opening and closing and footsteps, because I needed footsteps in my mind, because people would come in. Well, you got to hear them. This is an audio cassette. You got to have footsteps. So here's how it ended up doing it. I first of all discovered that if on my desk, if I opened the drawer, it kind of sounded like a door opening, and then when I closed the drawer, it kind of sounded like a door. So I had my drawer, and then I had my shoe on the desk, and I'd put my hand in the shoe and go. I'd be there with my hand in the shoe, and I'd open the drawer, step, close the drawer. All the doors close. Oh my God!
Yeah. The other thing, going back to sound effects, is I would, as a child, I would see things. I would hear sounds that are not supposed to be science fiction sound effects, but I'd I'd interpret them anyway. I mean, we used to have Larry Grayson's Generation game here, and there was an elimination noise, which was a woo, 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 and I thought, oh, what a great sound! That would be good for a gun in my new series, and then there was a washing liquid advert, which got everything brightened, and everything was suddenly it was turned all clean. And I thought, that's a great sound effect. We'll give it to the latest monster, and kind of, and you think, that sounds really great as a gun, even though it's never intended to be.
The sound of the laboratory on the Charlotte podcast is stolen from an Ealing comedy. But I was watching the film and I thought, oh, that's quite a good sound effect. And then I saw a scene where nobody was speaking and the sound effect was going. And I thought, right, as soon as this film is finished, I'm going back and I'm recording that and I can loop it. And then the rest of the film was kind of like, come on, I want it to finish. I need to get this sound effect.
The other thing I'd have on my little plays is incidental music, and at the end of something stunning, you'd want a little burst of suspense music, as I would call it. I would have records of the current day's, soundtracks. They were easy to find in record stores, but a lot of times I'd record it off TV shows that I knew damn well had a lot of music.
Yeah.
And I would record, let's just take an example, Lost in Space, Irwin Allen's 60s, had a lot of this kind of music. And I'd sit there at the TV and go, oh, here it comes. Click! And I'd record the music. And if they had little incidental sounds like maybe a sword fight while this music was going, well, that ended up in my show. Because that's the best you could do.
Yeah. But it was the finding, it was the searching for that was so much fun, though.
Yeah.
That sort of, we can get this. What can I do with this?
And also, like you said before, you could take the stuff and speed it up or slow it down and make it even sound even different. Well, all right. So, good Lord, we're nerding out about this, aren't we?
Is it wonderful?
Hello again, listeners. Before we conclude this edition of the show, we have some recordings that Paul made more recently, but which he hasn't yet had time to share with you. One of them is a behind-the-scenes recording that he and Nick made to celebrate the 500th episode, and the other is something that he recorded in the last few moments of 2021 into the first few minutes of 2022. In both of them he is editing the podcast. Yes, it is true, Paul has not had a rock and roll partying New Year for quite some while, and he wasn't doing a live show on New Year's Eve this year either. Anyway, have a listen, and then we will return to say our goodbyes to our guests this episode. Happy listening! Exclamation.
Hello, Paul. Hi. Let's talk about podcasting now. I'm here in Charlton All Saints, your ancestral home.
Yes.
January the 8th, I think, to 2022. And you're currently working on editing an episode. Which episode are you currently working on?
It's actually episode 500, so it's a biggie.
Is that the next one to be released?
It's the next one to be released. It's actually the 501st episode because I did a pilot episode, but it's episode 500. It's come at a sort of funny time in a way because I didn't quite know how many episodes I'd get out in 2021. In 2020, episode 400 was my last episode. It happened that it was the last episode of the year. But it's just, we've just sort of jumped over into 2022. But, because I had a Christmas episode and review of the year episode not long before this, I've had quite a lot of big episodes. It's not going to be the hardest to edit because some of these episodes, they become quite long and they become quite ambitious with plot lines and this is quite ambitious, but it's not actually going to be too difficult to edit. I've got some pre-recorded stuff that I've recorded with friends, like sort of little conversations that sort of mention the fact that it's episode 500. So there'll be some special guests, but everything's recorded. I'm currently just putting a bit of Sutton Park in. And I've reached the end of it, and I'm just going to add. So, for instance,
we've got to go and find Jay. I've got to get off to Lisa's house tonight. Got all this filming to do.
I did find out the link between Von Helbit and Doctor.
I need to transition between scenes. The next scene is supposedly set outside. It wasn't recorded outside, but so I've got some music.
I remember that time.
Yeah.
Actually, apart from Sutton Park, could you give us a sneak preview of what lies in store?
Well, it's a big episode because I've had quite a lot of story arcs in 2021. It was quite a big year for big plot ideas or doing things with characters because I couldn't always get people outside of the show to come in as guests as easily because of lockdown. I did have plenty of special guests, but I also was focusing a lot on the fictional side of the show. And so we're in episode 500, we're coming up to Yeti Uncle John, who's been incarcerated for the last 6 months or so. He's being freed, he's being let out. There's various rumblings and disagreements circulating around that plot line. But also Ick the alien is pregnant and he's about to give birth in this episode. So when I said this wasn't a very as ambitious an episode as some, it is kind of, but it's not going to be that too difficult to edit. But
it keeps the old adrenaline flowing, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's good. From a technical point of view, I'm interested because I'm currently looking at for viewers, for listeners, should I say? I'm currently looking at the Audacity screen. That's the software that you're making this on, and I work with Audacity, and it's interesting because I only work with the one level. Now you've got several levels open there, all with different sections of the recordings which complement each other.
I've got 3 tracks.
Now do you open one and then another and then another?
Yeah, and I have different things on it. The thing is, no one ever taught me how to use this software. I only know about what I know. I could do 10 tracks, but I'm not sure my laptop would cope with it.
But it's interesting from my point of view because having not worked with those layers, when you record, when you save it as a finished product, does it saves all those tracks as one recording all working together?
Yeah, it's one project, and traditionally I do 3 tracks because my old laptop didn't always cope with more than that, and I can't explain it or justify it. It's how I do it, and I just haven't bothered changing. I haven't even bothered trying to see whether it could cope with 4 tracks.
That's it's a really interesting idea because I didn't realise you could actually save on multiple tracks as one recording.
Audacity's weird. I hear about people doing
That's
different
really
things with it, and I think, well, I don't know how you do that, and vice versa. Obviously, I'm doing things, and you've not worked. So
yeah, I mean, it's a way of doing it that I'd not thought of before, but it's certainly something I'd consider for a future project. So, as I said, it is not how you'd put an average episode together.
Yeah. So I've got the end of that Sutton Park clip. I've now moved the music. So I'll just show you. Now I've moved the music to sort of transition.
Got to get off to Lisa's house tonight. Got all this filming to do.
You did find out the link between Von Helbit and Dr. Fellows, for example. Now there's a plot and a half. Come on.
Yeah, it's a really nice. That's a really nice transition.
Yeah. And then I'll jump, but then it'll go into the next scene.
I didn't think you'd be here, Comedy.
Well, no, I've said I'd come along. We haven't heard anything about Eek at the moment, so I thought
I've already done the recording. I'm playing all the characters, so I've had to change I've already done that bit. I've already done the characters that need voice changing. I've done that. I've prepared that.
So, for example, here, the clip that you just shown with the two, is it literally one recording of a voice that you've done and then another recording?
The one at the top is at this particular time, but it doesn't necessarily stay like that. But the top line is the voices. The middle one, well, I've got music on there at the moment. The bottom one is the sound effect of it being all windy outside. I'll play you this bit. This is having to go all together because I got confused. I had one character talking about, and I realised no, you're talking about the wrong. You're not playing the wrong character, but the character you're talking about is standing right next to you. So this doesn't.
Oh, I can't wait to see my lovely brother. He is still my brother, even though he's got a different name.
Oh yes, Tallulah. I still can't remember have we even told him that you're his sister. No, I guess.
Well, we'll sort that out later.
No, that's wrong.
Yes, that's me. Well, it's me. The whole of it's me, but the last bit's me going, no, that's not right. Because the character's talking about Yeti Uncle John as if he's... No, and I'm like, no, you've got yourself... Because you're playing all the characters, sometimes it gets... So,
do you often find yourself confused if you're playing multiple characters?
Yeah, sometimes I have to stop and go, no, it's not, that isn't... It shouldn't be in Cromitty's voice, it should be in somebody else's voice. Usually I notice, occasionally I've gone along and I've gone, I didn't know. I'm going to have to now record an extra bit for this episode 3 months after I originally recorded it, just to pad that bit. Also, this year, well, 2021, I had certain points like Yeti Uncle John goes to Shane jail, then he escapes from jail, then he and various other things are happening. And then if I did sometimes had time to do extra episodes, and then I'd have to go, where does this fit in? Okay, I think that fits in there. And then somewhere along the way, maybe things changed. And when I came to edit it, I'd have to go, no, this bit's going to have to go because it now contradicts the timeline of the story I've been telling. But it's to me, it's so much like how it was when I was doing writing, but it's just audio. You're having to amend yourself. I don't. Whereas my friend Toppie, he will scrap whole episodes if it doesn't. He'll do it, and it doesn't work. Scrap the whole episode. I've never done that. I've recorded it. It'll be used in some form. I might have to chop the odd bit out, but
nothing's ever wasted.
Nothing's ever wasted because
like the communal pig.
In a way, it's great. In a way, it's great that Toppie can do that. I can't. I'm like, well, that's but I can't do that. I do have an episode that's going to come out later in the year, probably for April Fools. And I think you may remember that I did this with Sutton Park. At least I did it theoretically in that it was an idea. I recorded an episode in about 2017, which was going to be my emergency last episode of the podcast. I think I was always talking about plot lines with Sutton Park that would be the end of the.
That's right. I remember them.
Yeah, we never recorded them and set them aside. We used the ideas late and kind of we'll do something different when it comes to the end of the show. But I actually did record this episode in 2017, which was my emergency last episode if I got knocked down by a bus. Now it's 3 or 4 years. presuming I can put it all together, it should all be all together. I'm going to release it as my April Fool's episode this year, probably.
The last episode's not you being knocked down by
I'm going to record another emergency last, but it'll be more recent because I don't think the cast has changed that much. It's certainly not the regulars from when I recorded that, but even so, I'd like a more recent last episode. But I have to actually do another last episode.
Yeah. How much? Obviously, that you record vast amounts over the years. Over the year, we're entering a new year, 2022. How much material roughly have you still got to release?
I've got quite a lot. I keep
as it were.
I always put it on my blog as a sort of coming up this, ones that are still episodes that are still to come, and I've roughly got about 25 episodes that have recorded all. They won't. The order I have them at the moment will continue to change because I recorded an episode with you and Toppie, which will now be inserted a lot sooner than 25. It'll go in the next 5 episodes. But
so in actual fact, the episodes to come are signposted. People know to expect them.
Kind of put little things that are on my blog of episodes that are coming up, but I won't commit to that order staying the same. It might do. And I mean, at the moment with episode 500, yes, I needed to put episode 499 before because it linked in, and I need to do 501 as 501 because that goes straight up. But after that, I'll be back to sort of, you can release in whatever order you like. Although I have recorded my Valentine's episode, and that's ready to be edited. Just because I knew I'd be doing episode 500 this month, I didn't want to be caught short and I'd be rushing to do a Valentine's episode. So it's all edited, and I can start editing it when it becomes appropriate. Once February starts, I'll be thinking, okay, I might release it second in February after the February episodes or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've just deleted that mistake that I was telling you about, and so now I'm going to sort of join the. So I think the next, so I can. Just waiting for it to.
The useful having it on 2 levels, 4 levels, should I say? Because you've got room to manoeuvre.
August, you're so silly. I can't wait to see you, dear Uncle John. It'll be so nice to see you, won't it, Martin? Yes, it will.
A very sort of that felt to me like too much of a gap between the two conversations. So I'm very sort of. I'm going to take that bit just to speed up the. Except I pressed the completely wrong button. It's put me right back to the beginning of the.
What do we do before the undo button? I tell you.
No, it hasn't actually. It's just skipped to the starting to get dark outside, and my laptop's.
So it says, sort of sum up. Is there some particular episodes that are coming up that you're particularly looking forward to?
Well, I'm looking forward to the. I do enjoy the fictional episodes. So I do have. I like the Valentine's episode. Something big is going to happen in that. Something obviously big is happening in this episode. So I look forward to those because I enjoy the acting. I enjoy the storytelling and because I don't do any other sort of writing these days. So that's where I get to be creative. But we have a lot of sort of interesting episodes in the can. And ones that I'm kind of got people ready to come back and do episodes, make recordings with me. So there'll be lots of sort of trivia, stroke film, stroke music type episodes as well. So because the way I think of it is that we're sort of a podcast about a podcast, and some episodes are what the podcast is, the film or music episodes, and then the other episodes are the people who make the podcast what goes on in their lives behind the scenes, which are always very over the top things, or aliens or whatever. So the two different types of episodes work well together, because one we can be a bit more serious, and the other we can parody ourselves, or I enjoy doing both, and I know some of my collaborators prefer to take part in the different sorts of episodes. Some of them do both. Some of them prefer to do one. But things change, or over time the show changes. You don't realise it's changed until you look back and go, "Oh, that's quite different from what we were doing a year ago." So I better get back to it.
Yes, we'll leave you to it, and look forward to another year's worth of recordings coming our way.
Thank you very much. Hi listeners, it's me. It's New Year's Eve. It's 6 minutes till 2022. I had some boozy coffees, and I've watched the 2021 edition of Candyman, which was kind of good, but I don't think it's as good as the original. And I watched what's it called? Oh yeah, Catfish, which I'm quite a fan of. I'm sorry that I didn't do a live show at either Christmas or New Year this year, but I have been working on an episode that will be going out on New Year's Day, which will be out by the time you hear this. I'm not sure where this will be going. Probably on our next Chatterbox episode. I've got a lot of episodes planned. Obviously, we've got episode 500 coming up pretty soon, and there's sort of 3 connected episodes: 499, 500, and 501. Yeah, there were all manner of episodes recorded, but I am aiming to do another Chatterbox very soon. But yes, I've already completed an episode that will be going out on New Year's Day, which is in 3 minutes' time, but I'm not putting it out until I've gone to bed and woken up again, but it's all ready to go. So hopefully that makes up for no live New Year episode. So does that mean I've done 97 episodes in 2021? Well, kind of. But no, but it didn't go out in 2021. Dealey is nearby. I've put the 2022 calendars up already, which may or may not be bad luck. I think I can hear fireworks. I've done absolutely nothing other than watch films. Did I mention Sons and Daughters as well? I watched an episode of that. very, very rock and roll. But as I said, I did have boozy coffee. I decided to end the year as I began it. Well, kind of. Or I should say, I'm spending the last couple of minutes of 2021 doing the thing that's made me the happiest during 2021. And that's editing. Well, the podcast, let's say. Not necessarily editing the podcast. That's the that's the slow bit. Recording it is probably more fun than editing it, although it is nice to hear it all come together. So that's what I'm doing. I'm editing episode 498, which is all about vampires. And again, you'll have heard it by the time this comes out. But anyway, as I wasn't doing a live show, I did kind of want to at least be recording at midnight, even if it's just a short message. Yes, I'm trying to find the transition noise, the one that goes between scenes. I also need to find the peepers, Ix peepers noise. And yes, there we go. It's just gone over to 2022. And there's definitely fireworks outside. As long as they stay outside and don't come in through the window, it'll be fine. Yes, so Happy New Year. Probably the quietest New Year I've had in the time I've done, well, since the early days of the podcast anyway. So I did do New Year shows for quite a few years. Maybe I'll do another one another year. Anyway, here we go. Here's the peeper noise. Here's the transition noise. So I can sort that out. And yes, there's that. I've quite a long way to go with this episode at the moment, but that's fine. I am glad that I can put the next episode out, the first episode of 2022. I'm not sure, because Libsyn, that hosts my podcasts, as it's an American company, it may be that they won't update my account to 2022 until early, until America becomes 2022. So yeah, I won't try and upload it now, but it is ready to go, so that's good. There we go. I should just put the peeper sound in place. Actually, I don't know what it is. Can't remember where I recorded this episode, but the sound does sound like I'm recording it somewhere different. So I'm putting a background sound. There we go. So anyway, I think that's all I've got to say. Happy New Year. I'll do this for another 5 minutes or so. Then I will probably think about going to bed. I think Toby's already gone to bed, or at least he's fallen asleep if he's not planned to go to bed. Ouch. I will speak to you again soon, listeners. And may 2022 be a very successful year. Maybe I'll manage to release 100 episodes in 1 year this year. Something that has evaded me until now. Those fireworks sound very close. And the dog upstairs doesn't like it at all. Right, okay, more soon. Bye for now. Happy New Year.
Getting back to your fanzines, I sort of get now how you were doing them. You guys didn't even need to be in the same room necessarily, so that's interesting. You'd put this stuff together, and then what would happen? You'd do what? How would you get it to other people? Did you make a copy of it and physically send them a cassette tape of your show?
Can't remember now how I advertised the first one. I think we had Paul and I both had a network of pen friends back in the late 80s and early 90s. And I think we'd spread the word that, well, certainly with that first Ray Face shift, I sort of said to people, well, we've got this happening and that happening, and so Paul would send it to some of his friends, and I'd send it, and so on and so on. So it would, and then I think we started advertising about issue 2 or 3 when I think Toppie was still a member of the Doctor Who Appreciation Society by then. I'd gone by then, and he would advertise in Celestial Toy Room, which was still going then, and we get customers from that.
Give me an idea, like maybe you'd put an ad in there, like how many orders did it generate? I mean, give me some idea.
I've got a book somewhere of all the people that ordered from day one, and I suppose it was, if I was lucky, it was about 12 to 20 an issue, perhaps. Obviously, when things got going, it was a little bit better known, and I even had an order from America once. It was about $2 for the whole issue. I think it cost me more to send than it was.
Right. And that was the other thing you mentioned.
And then somebody ordered it, the complete set from from.
Now, that was the other thing you mentioned, is that there were people that charged, and you did not, or maybe sometimes, but most of the time you didn't. And so you would probably have to find a padded envelope to put these cassettes in and mail them?
Most definitely, yes. I mean, I would always ask them to send the cassette in a stamped addressed envelope. So that was all I asked of them. I didn't want to charge because I was afraid of being copyrighted, and so I never charged for it. But it was good. It was enormous fun. It would have taken the fun out of it, actually. I just saw it as an extended family of fandom. And we advertised in DW Dream Watch Bulletin, which was a magazine which evolved from Doctor Who, but then went on to every other telefantasy one. There we had a quarter of a page, I think, at one point. But we had contributions from America and Australia as well, from people there that sent in stuff.
That's amazing. So I don't know how you would ever track it, but this must have happened. So if I got a tape from you, I'd probably maybe order it from other people, and I'd have these. And then if I had other friends who were into this, maybe if I got a tape from you, I'd mail it to my friend. And your tapes probably went around to people you may not even have known, because somebody shared, said, "Hey, you got to listen to this," and send it to that guy.
Well, I mean, if I had every listener had been as enthusiastic as yourself, yes, that would be the lucky way of doing it. I think I had a very good American friend called Rachel Sinclair, who was part of the fan group, and she got her partner involved in some contributions, and it did circulate a little, but I think it circulated better in America, in Oregon, than it did here in Britain. They tended to keep it more to themselves if it was in Britain, I think.
Maybe it was because, I don't know. I just, maybe people were doing this in America, but I just don't think so. I think this is a UK phenomenon.
That's really interesting to hear, actually. I don't think I've ever sort of thought of it that way. There was one in Australia called Doctor Who 2000, run by a guy called Neil Hogan. He actually worked with Lee Freeman of Sutton Park fame for a bit, because Lee did the covers. He was a very, very good artist. And he did. So there was one in Australia, but I don't, like you said, I don't think they were hugely widespread across the globe.
Well, I really found it all super fascinating, and just, naturally it made me very nostalgic for all the things I did with my tape recorder. And also it wasn't lost on me that, today, with today's technology, you have something like Round the Archives, and they are accepting articles from people, as you guys over there like to call them, of material, that people from, like me, I sent in something to Round the Archives, and it got on the show, and that's what you guys were doing way back then.
Yeah, so it's as you quite rightly say, it's a natural progression from that, and it's it's still spreading the love.
Mm-hmm. All really, really awesome. Really awesome.
I
think I may have exhausted my questions.
But we are running out of time. Before we go, I ought to say that if you missed the original episode where we discussed the Tapezines, it was episode 489. And it was called In the 1990s When Tapezines Ruled the Earth, and it was released on the 9th of December 2021. So relatively recent episode, although it was recorded back in 2020 during one of our lockdowns. Because we recorded so much, it was one I thought was a bit more niche, so we didn't put it out as quickly as...
I'm thrilled to bits it had such an impact. That's great. I mean...
it hits all my buttons. And there's people... like me, and I know that are listening that totally get this, totally get it, and are excited by it.
Well, guys, it's out there, and you're very welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Well, Toppie, thanks for joining us, and Nick, thanks for joining us. I'm glad we were able to talk together again.
Yeah, we let you get a few words in, Paul, but you know.
Yeah.
I was sunbathing outside, and I wasn't exposed. But anyway, yes, we're running out of time, so I'll say goodbye to you both and to you listeners, and we'll be back again soon. You take care.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 I think you guys are just doing a great job with preserving all this stuff. Because, it does mean something, even if it's just to us. But just the fact that you're taking Sutton Park and putting it on something that maybe will preserve it a while longer. Because those tapes, they're not going to last forever. But you're doing it and you're archiving it. That's great.
Even so, there's no plans to get rid of the originals at the moment. Because, well, partly because we're still improving on the digitizations, and partly because some people would probably say, "Oh, we've digitized them now. You don't need to keep the originals." But it would feel like chucking a family member on a bonfire or something.
Also, they're all, as we've discovered over the last 5 years, there are better and better ways of transferring it. I mean, I've only just discovered the joys of the NKB file, which Keith, our friend, introduced me to, whereby for the first time ever we've been able to actually copy Sutton Park tapes whole, whereas usually it would stop at 25 minutes and then give you another file for the last 5 minutes, which was infuriating. So there's still a few episodes to track down, mostly from 2000. So mostly the later stuff. But
are you saying that you've actually you've pretty much digitized the entire Sutton Park? Is that what you mean?
We're near.
Really?
We're near. As I say, there's some of the 3100s still.
Good Lord.
They might be in a box in your place, Paul.
Yeah, maybe because towards the end of my interest or my protective motherliness of the tapes was probably less towards the end of the show because I was moving on to something else. So maybe I lost track of where one or two tapes got to. But
I've definitely become in my sort of middle age, I've definitely become a bit of a zealot in terms of preserving old recordings and old, record audio, video, anything. It's and sharing it with whoever's interested. Really, it's really become something of a passion. I'm thinking about it. I think it probably always has been.
Yeah. Well, there's it's so worthwhile, especially personal things like you've had interviews with people that are no longer with you, and there they are. You can hear their voices.
Friends I went to college with, friends that from a church. I think one of them is dead, and another one is estranged, and I'm not likely to see her again. And I need with those. There are certain ones I need to be in a strong place to listen to because of that. But there's my grandparents. My grandfather sounded just like my dad. And my grandmother who sounded very Welsh.
Isn't that wonderful?
Great. Myself arguing with my sister or something, or trying to sing a song and being interrupted by her, or leaving a message from my mum when I was 7 years old, and because she came back from Paris. She went to Paris at one point, and I was going to be it was going to be too late when she got home for me to be still up. So I left. I did a tape recording with my sister and I. That still exists.
I don't know if people are less embarrassed about being recorded than they are to be videoed. I did get my mum on Sutton Park back in the day on video, and my dad, but it's easier to sort of ask my mum to, she's become a bit of a regular on the show in the last couple of years.
Well, I'm also thinking of your niece, Paul. What's neat about it is that when you go back, she was quite a bit younger than she is now, and she's got, a little girl's voice, and she's all kinds of energy and crazy and kooky. And then a couple of years later, she's back, obviously matured quite a bit, but you've got it recorded. It's amazing.
It's harder to get it. You have to go through her agents these days.
My niece, I mean, I've got some old recordings of when she was small, including her 6th birthday, or audio recordings. And you do. When they grow up, they become they do a little bit. Oh, right, you want to record me? Yeah.
She was very keen for a while, but I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I don't know what to blame it on, but
well, she's just at that time.
I wasn't like that. I wasn't. I didn't have a teenager. I was a teenager for about a week. I think of the particular holiday where I sulked a bit for a week, but generally I wasn't a typical teenager. I didn't really rebel against my parents. I didn't.
Well,
I was.
It's never too late, Paul. You can.
I'm going to smash up there. No, I'm not going to do that. I used to rebel against my peers because I didn't want to be part of somebody else's club. I wanted to be my own club. Maybe that's more unusual than I realised.
But Paul did a whole video film with my niece when she was about 16, 17. And now she's got it on DVD, and we've done various. There's an interview with her from '96, and when she's in a relationship, she's sort of you get past the first base there, but if you really want to get to know her, you really let in, you get shown this film.
I think I don't know. I don't want to speak for Toppie, but I think we're in a relatively similar situation, and obviously with the well-being like it is at the moment, I think there are definitely people out there who do podcasts, and that's just something they do, and they do other things that are probably more exciting than podcasting. But certainly for me, doing my podcast is the most exciting thing I do. That is the highlight of there isn't, particularly at the moment, there isn't much else that can better me releasing a podcast.
That I do feel the same way. My interest, it's more than just a little hobby. It's like, it's kind of what I do. It's my creative outlet. It's much more important than to me anything else I'm doing. Hey, are you guys familiar with a wire recorder? This goes way back in history. Are you familiar with it? Do you know about them?
I don't.
Wire.
Before magnetic tape, there was a portable recorder. It was on wire. And it was literally a spool of wire that somehow sound vibrations would get, I don't know, etched into, I don't know. But it was a funny contraption. You can Google it, wire recorder. And I have a recording of my father when he was a child. This is all before magnetic tape. Mm-hmm. And it was done with a wire recorder of this musical that that the neighborhood kids did. And I've got it on that. It was on that wire recorder for years. And then my father took it and put it on reel-to-reel magnetic tape. And then, I don't know, 5 or 7 years ago, I took that magnetic tape and put it onto, I made it an MP3 file.
Isn't that brilliant? Yeah. Oh, I know. I hadn't heard. I know there was supposed to have been I passingly mentioned a reel-to-reel recording from the early 60s of my cousin and my aunt. And I would love to. I've got various recordings of my cousin. But I'd love to have had a recording.
I believe somewhere there's a vinyl record of my dad singing when he was a choir boy, because he was considered to have a very good voice, and I think it was made into vinyl, but then his voice broke. So I think that's true. I believe that's the thing. He's always very sort of, singing to him is like somebody with a really good voice, which as a music fan, that isn't always what makes a good singer. There are people with good voices, and people with awful voices that do great stuff. To me, if I listen to opera, I'm just like, la la la, what a silly man singing in a whoa, 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 whoa. That's not a good scene.
I'm dying 3 years later. It's 3 hours later, I'm still dying.
Well, I just got from a listener of the Smellcast a wonderful MP3 that was originally recorded on magnetic tape, but it's of his grandfather singing. And I guess he just occasionally would sing into a recorder for fun. Well, it got preserved, and it's now an MP3 file. He sent it to me, and I'm going to put it on the show, and I'm going to have him and his brother talk about their grandfather, and then I'm going to put in its entirety about 30 minutes of this old man singing. I love it.
That's the way to do it. That's to put it out there and kind of celebrate it. That's so good. Maybe Paul will let me put on my Paris tape.
Yeah.
At some point, or even worse, my pop song, which is very tacky. And I don't exactly think I wrote out the words in advance.
Harry and I have done. Harry and I have done music, but it's really been Harry. But he dragged me into doing singing, which was a bit of an experience, and just. I like singing along to things, but actually recording it and keeping it for posterity.
You'll never.
Never. I was only chosen because I'm slightly better at singing than he is, but that doesn't say much.
Yeah, you don't want to hear me singing. Oh my God. Oh.
You do a wonderful Wandering Star, though. Great voice. You'd have a great voice, Wandering Star.
I gotta go now. Bye. Gotta go. Bye.
Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.
This show is part of the Pride 48 network. Find more shows over at pride48.com.
Oh dear, what's going on now? Oh, it's the Shy Life Podcast. Let's go.
I have a voice. I have a voice.
You have a voice.
You have a voice. We have a voice.
We have a voice.
Unique voices in podcasting.
UnivazPods.net.
I'm not going to worry about it. I'll speak to them. And the only thing is, I don't know what type of police I'll be speaking to. In that, what I mean is, am I going to be speaking to like serious police who are like very, very serious police, or am I going to be talking to police who I can tell about aliens and Shane Jail and the Charlotte podcast? There's, am I going to be talking to, very, very serious crime drama police or comedy police or something like that?
Or like X-File police.
Yeah. There's so many different sorts of police out there. If you talk to the wrong ones, they could give you a very hard stare. But
you're going to have to suss it out.
Yeah.
Suss it out, yeah.
Oh, well.
I wonder if having Sniffy Martin, like maybe he can help.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good idea. I'll have him with me. Because he might even know them or something. He can definitely have good thinking, Toppie. Thank you.
Yeah.
But, anyway, I better go because I'll let you know what the police say and everything.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Okie dokie. But bye for now then. Bye for now.
Bye.
I want us to be friends, like proper friends again, Toppie. I don't want to be arguing with you.
I do too, Paul.
We have a breakthrough.
It's just that the Uncle John is so awful and he spoils things.
He's okay, Paul.
I love you, Toppie. I love you. I love you. I love you, therapist, man. Quite enough. That's exactly what I wanted. When I was editing us arguing about it in that particular episode, and I put it into the episode, and I knew it had gone out. I got lots of Sutton Parky sort of soap opera argument thrills.
all that Sutton Park adrenaline came.
Here comes some coffee.
That's right. Thank you.
Was that Mom?
Oh, that's Mum.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul's mom.
Hi.
Boy, I'll tell you what, I don't got anybody bringing me coffee.
Oh.
He's not all that shy is right. Sheesh.
I hope that shy is gay today. That's all I can say.
Boy, I hope Nick Goodman is on this episode.